Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the special council meeting for the town of Tabor for July 26, 2021. Thank you. I will call the meeting to order and ask for the adoption of the agenda as presented, please. Councilor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also move.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes. There are no minutes. Business arising, no bylaws. Action items. Item 6.1, 2022 proposed capital budget. Mr. Orwa.
To step down to my role now. Thank you very much, members of council. Now, administration has prepared the proposed 2022 capital budget listing for council's consideration, and I think, do I need the mouse? So each department has prepared a capital project summary to be presented to council today, and I gave out the capital project summaries for your review last week, and I hope you had a chance to digest those projects. Now, the eligible projects may be funded by federal or provincial grants, but whenever possible, grant funds are used ahead of municipal funding sources just to reduce the impact on taxpayers. So administration has estimated that in 2022, we will receive approximately 1.8 million from MSI and about 471,000 from federal gas tax. And then combined with our capital contribution in the amount of 2.2 million, we feel and we're very comfortable that we can do projects worth 4.2 million without dipping into the capital reserves. Now, for your information, again, MSI Capital Grant Program has been extended to 23 to 2024. And it will be replaced with what they're calling local government fiscal framework. They have extended it again by 1 year. So the allocation formula and program design are still being developed by the province. So there's nothing to report at this time. Now, we are going to follow the order on the list, which matches the order on the binder, which I gave out to council last week. So again, at this time, I will call upon the IT manager to take the floor, because if you open your binder, they follow the same list as what I have on the board. So the number one would be IT, then the police, like that, fire, until the end. And then there is the second part of it, we'll do some little explanation at the end as well. So the top part, these are just from reserves, and you can see on the right-hand side, that's where we have the funding. So there's some projects that have to come from reserves, and then part of it from MSI, and some parts of it from federal gas tax. So we'll follow this order. The same order is what you have in your binder. So if you have any questions, probably if you've already dissected those projects, this is the time to ask those questions. At this time, I yield my time to the IT manager.
All right. Thank you. Councilor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for Mr. Orwa, though, if I may. It's regarding the MSI funding, sir. Is that assured for 2022, or is that just a guess?
Thank you very much. That's why I have it there as an estimate, because they don't have anything out there. But my estimate is based on the last 5 years. So when I take those averages, I get about 1.8 million. It might be more, it might be less, but I'll be around the same figure.
Councilor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Orwa, I've heard say that the government is going to reduce the MSI funding for the municipalities by 25%, commencing when? Do you know, sir?
Not yet, and I think that's why I did mention that when the MSI stops, they're coming up with what they're calling local government fiscal framework. Originally, they had indicated that it was to start around 2022, but again, they have postponed it to 2023, 2024, because they're still coming up with the best formula. And at this point, they do not know yet. So there's no information out there that we can rely on. That's why I decided to use an average. So if you know we've been getting over 2 million in our MSI, I scaled it down by almost 200,000.
All right, perfect. Thank you. All right.
Good afternoon, worship
afternoon,
member
Al.
of council. Thank you for having us. So in 2022, IT have 3 capital projects. The annual computer replacement as every year. So we are replacing based on the lifespan for each device we have, server, switches, network devices, computers, everything. And the next project is the trade-in for Jeep. We looked at different options. We looked at lease or rental, and we found out the best option for us would be a purchase. So the Jeep has been a really good public image for IT and some of council members too. It's over 10 years. It's actually 12 years old, and it started causing some issues. Our maintenance actually went up from operating, so that's why we are pushing it this year. And the last one would be a fiber cable between our data center in the administration building and the new fire hall for more reliability and better bandwidth for the fire department and the backup 911 center. Right now, we are running over a VPN, which is working, but it's not as reliable as a wired connection. And if you have any questions.
All right, thank you. Councillor Stravas.
Yes, Your Worship. Al, I wonder if you could just clarify this internet cable, this fiber optic cable. So you said it's going to run from administration. It's going to run from here to there?
Currently, we have a connection, a wired connection between us here to recreation, and one from here to public works, and one to the police. So it allows the connection between our servers, our files, emails, everything, just a direct connection, where the connection is still going up in the cloud, finding our tunnel, and going down, so it's more reliable.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions arising? Al, you're getting off pretty easy. Thank you, Al.
Now we'll continue the same order. The next would be the police, please.
Right. Thank you, Chief Abella.
Sorry, none of them except for the second line should be new to you. The other points have been raised in previous years within our 10-year capital plan that's been presented to council in the past. So we always, within our fleet, have an annual car replacement. We have increased that by $5,000 due to the cost of the vehicles and the cost of some of the equipment that has gone in. Our fingerprint hardware and software is around, what we'd like to do is to move our civil fingerprinting out of our cell block and into the front part of the police station. This prevents people from having to go into the jail in order to get fingerprints. And when we have prisoners there, we're unable to bring civilians into and we house about 360, 350 prisoners a year. So by doing this, we will be able to fingerprint people at the front and not, this is for civil purposes, right? For things like adoptions and sports checks and things like that for people volunteering in community. So that's the second line. The third line is a major investment for the community with regards to Next Gen 911. That's been on the books for some time and was moved a couple years now due to technology and TELUS having to delay that a little bit, but it is coming in 2022. We have the pistol replacement, which has been on the books for a little while as well. We did have to increase that a little bit for 2 new members that are on the police service, and just the costs associated with new pistol purchases. And then our tasers and intoxilizer are both at end of life and require replacing. We will be replacing with the X26 taser, not the new T7. It's one that'll save us some money by, we'll allow to keep the same holsters and same cartridges for the taser without having to purchase new ones. And then our breath testing equipment, the intoxilizer, is at end of life, and we're just waiting on the province to tell us which one are approved instruments before we can make that purchase in 2022. Those are the capital requests of the police service, sir.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief Abella, the new intoxilizer, I know you need it, but all the revenue created by the intoxilizer goes to the province, does it not?
It does. Actually, can I comment on that just a little bit? The new APIS system, which is the administrative sanctions, not the criminal sanctions, but the administrative sanctions that are now in place. The chiefs have just made the request to have that money come back to the communities, but we've been told no already.
All right, Councillor Beckering.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Why would you deflate me with the end of that statement?
Sorry. I wanted to give you good news.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yes.
regarding the next generation thing, whatever, I don't understand that, but whatever. It says, not an option, required to be updated.
Correct.
And then on the bottom, it says, other options or recommendations, defer to a future year. It's kind of a conflict, is it not?
I don't think that's in anything I provided.
No, it's not.
It's not, it can't be. As far as I'm concerned, the next gen 911 is a technological software that has a date that has to be implemented, or you no longer have 911 in your service area, at least answerable by the chief of police service. So there's a date that it has to be done by.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Any other questions arising?
Sorry.
All right. That's all right. We can hear you fine. Just can't hear you online.
apologize.
That's all. That's okay. No trouble at all. All right. Any other questions at all? Okay. No, I think we're good for now. Thank you, Chief.
The next would be fire.
All right.
See, the chief is ready.
Chief Munchak.
Mayor, Council, thank you so much. We have two projects that'll be shown today. Same projects you've seen in our last future capital projects. First is the post office repairs. There you've seen there's some windows that have delaminated and some flooring that have been requested or required into the post office as we've taken over the lease in that space. We're looking at doing that this next year. Last one is on the fire side. It's SCBAs, or self-contained breathing apparatus. These are the tanks and the pack systems that the firefighters use when they go into structures to breathe clean air. This is at the end of life. They have a 15-year life expectancy. And our last ones are 2007, coming up to this year, 2022, hitting our 15-year life expectancy. So I'm here for any questions.
All right. Thank you. Any questions for Chief? None whatsoever. Oh, all right. Councillor Becker.
Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Chief, these old SCBAs, are they worth anything? Can you slough them off to someone or not?
To trade these SCBAs in at the end when we go for the purchase of the new. So what we're hoping is we can trade them off to industry cruise ships that don't have the same requirements as municipal fire departments.
So, Chief, or just to clarify, are they end of life cycle for fire
For municipal
usage?
fire use. Yeah,
All right,
meeting the
not-
requirements of
But they're
NFPA.
still good for some other organizations, possibly.
Yeah, that don't have the same level of
Same criteria.
safety.
Okay,
measures.
perfect. Thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Chief, so the trade-ins, is that inclusive of the 256, or did you figure in a number of the value of the trade-in?
Yes, correct. It is actually included into that 256. So the new number minus the trade-in would be the 256.
All right, Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you give us a value of the trade-in approximately, sir?
They're hoping to give us about $1,500 per pack and spare bottle. 18.
Thank you. All right, any other questions whatsoever? All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Mr. Irwa.
Yes, His Worship, I would encourage that anybody speaking to tap the mic, especially for minute taking. Looks like please use the microphone.
All right, thank you. Ms. Monks.
Good afternoon, Your
Good
Worship
afternoon.
and members of council. My apologies, Mr. Orwa, for cutting you off. So planning has one project for this year. So we've been working on the Gateway Plan, which was endorsed by council in September 2020. An expression of interest will be out shortly to look for designs for new entry signage to either focus on retrofitting the original or for a completely new design, potentially integrating the corn husk that forms part of the municipal development plan graphic that we have. So this project represents a multi-year, total 200,000 estimated, to replace the gateway signage, including our Tabor welcome signs, the downtown signage, and twinning signage.
All right, thank you. Any questions at all? There are none, so thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, thank you. Mr. Scherer.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
We are the bulk of your capital budget, hate to say, but, so we'll start off with our surface works, which is a sidewalk replacement program. We do this every even year. This is, we've noticed a lot more sidewalk repairs lately. We just finished our 2021 sidewalk assessment. We found 160 locations where the sidewalk was raised more than half an inch, which we have a sidewalk policy, needs replacing, or we grind down the edge, or we add cold mix to it to make sure it's even for pedestrians to walk on. We might want to look a little bit higher in the future because of the paving stone downtown is deteriorating so fast. Vendors have been putting salt on as they normally do to prevent accidents, slip, falls. So that's deteriorating quite. I just want to bring that to your attention. It's deteriorating quite beyond its life cycle. Let's put it that way. And also we have our asphalt milling overlay program that just repair patches and asphalt repairs in different areas. The transportation master plan, this is a much needed plan. It helps us with our grant submittals. It helps us with our developers. It'll even help us in our traffic committee with traffic counts, signs, things like that. So the last one was done in 1981, so we're really behind the ball here. So we're looking forward to getting that updated. GPS survey equipment, our current survey equipment is outdated. I mean, 6 years old. We can't get updates to software anymore. This is a far more advanced survey equipment, which means we would bring more surveying in-house, less we have to do with MPE. So it really does save us money in all our projects. Digital traffic speed sign, this is something traffic committee has been bringing forward annually. It just shows traffic's actual speeds. We put it in various locations, collect data from it. There's an RRFD flashing crosswalk sign that has to be location to be determined by council. We'll bring that forward. I think that was only 12,000. 48th Street parking, Confederation Park. This was a request to council to bring it forward. You might want to postpone this till the Clearview Lodge expansion, but that'll be up to you. Rubber tire excavator. This is an excavator that's past its life. Is 25 years old, over 12,000 hours on it. It's done well for the town, and we bought it used apparently in 2001, and it was 1997 then. So we're looking to replace that. This is the one that we mainly use for digging the graves, things like that. Ash concrete replacement. You can see a picture of it. Wood chipper unit there again. 20 years of life out of it. It's pretty good. It's time to replace it. Water meter program. It's a standard 30,000 every year. We have to replace water meters all over the place. Residential, commercial. LED light replacement, water treatment plant. There again, it's to update the lighting, more for safety than anything. It's pretty dark in some of these treatment facilities. So we're looking to update the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant. Self-contained breathing apparatus. It's time for our treatment staff to update that, and in conjunction with the fire hall, with the fire replacement, we just find we get better costs that way. So we went in with them. Our SCBA are a little bit different unit what they use, but it's more effective for our use. So it's been tendered like that, or will be tendered. Yep. 0-turn mower, it's just a mower replacement. Most of these mowers will be getting 5 to 7 years life out of them, cutting in the ditches, so that's pretty good. Transfer station upgrades, it's a big upgrade. We gave you pictures in your binders. A lot of that concrete is deteriorated in front where the openings are because the openings aren't big enough for people to back in and out. We really need to get rid of that front wall, extend it out, give us more room, and put a new front to it. We had an assessment done by MP Engineering, and it really needs replacing. 175,000 of that actually came from the Waste Authority. When they dissolved, they had that set aside for building repairs and maintenance. And that's it, unless you wanted to get into Eureka or the long-term ones. So Eureka expansion on 69th Avenue used to be 3.3 million, has now gone up to 5.8 now almost, I don't know, 5.6, due to cost escalation in products and contractors are really busy. So you might want to hold off for a year and see where it goes because we kind of think it will come down after a year. And that's the same with 62nd Street, the Eureka expansion. It's at 2.3 almost. It was at just under 2 million last year. So some big costs which could impact what you're charging for your lots out there for your industrial lots. So we have to take that into consideration where we used to charge this, X amount of dollars, you're going to be charging more now if you could decide to move ahead with it. Raw water pump station, this is a project we brought forward. It is funded under Municipal Wastewater and Water Fund for 1.4 million, just over. We're hoping to get it going. I would ask council for engineering for 2022, not the full project, and then the full project to start in 2023. So about 200,000. I didn't put that in here, but it really makes sense that we start that, and then we can plan better for 2023. So that's a bit of a change to the capital. Then we get into our alternates. We often looked at that at bulb out by the police station. It was about 34,000. It's just a basic add-on. 53rd Avenue parking stalls was 110,000. That's just basically clearing out more room for soccer fields. Everybody was parking on 47th there. It became quite a nightmare. 56th Avenue's proposed sidewalk. We've had a few complaints come forward, so we thought we'd bring it forth as a project where kids are walking on the grass. Why can't the town put a sidewalk there? We brought it forth a few years ago, and council just saw no need for it at this time, but it's up to you. And the downtown Bubble project, I know this is one of council's considerations, but price went up from 250,000. We just got it updated. For concrete's 480,000. If you want to replace with paving stones, 500,000. So the cost has already doubled. This price is about 3 years old. So those costs have gone up. Is there any questions about any of them?
All right, thank you. Councilor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship. To Mr. Scheer, did you miss telling us about the wood chipper?
No,
Did you?
20 years old.
Oh, okay. So. Sorry, I'm thinking that is this not something that it could be contracted? I mean, can you use a wood chipper year round like that? Is that not something that we get contract out, have somebody else do?
We in conjunction with the parks, anytime we have damaged trees, we go out and we chip them all right away. The thing we like about the chips, we take them out of the landfill and customers come and get them, residents at Tabor. It's hard to say. It depends on how many needs to be chipped. Each spring and fall, we go around and we go down the lanes, we pick up everybody's trees and branches and we chip them all. For a contractor to do that, we haven't gone look at that price, but it's 2 weeks out of the year for two guys. So we'd be looking at $40,000 to $50,000 anyway per year. That's just off the top of my head. Okay.
All right, thank you. Mr. Scheer, just to clarify, so that you said it's roughly 20 years old, you believe?
Yes.
So evidently you've used that wood chipper a lot over the years. And,
Yes, it's paid for itself. no
looking
doubt
to
about that.
make use of that in the future. Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions arising? None whatsoever? All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Orwa.
The next would be recreation, please.
Good afternoon.
Microphone.
Just remember, it's my first budget now. I'm only 7 weeks on the job, so. And I should have brought my glasses because I can hardly read that. So, can somebody make that just a tad bigger? Oh, thank you. So the very first one, it would be the Aqua tile replacement. This is something that's been ongoing for quite some time now, and we do need to replace it. Leisure pool tank filter replacement. Also the Aqua, the center locker replacement as well. Those are starting to rot, get rusty and rotten in the bottom, so we need to look at an alternative. So what we decided to do is split it half for this year, and then you'll see in 2023, we will attempt to do the other half. We're looking for a new floor scrubber. To do mainly inside the arena itself. We do have the main one in the auditorium, but inside the arena, we could definitely use one more. A grass vac replacement. Again, the one we currently have, it's basically on its last legs and wheels. So therefore, we're looking at replacing that particular unit. We're proposing to put a trout pond storage shed, which would save us from going back and forth all the time and just have something there permanently. The Kiwanis playground, you might, if you've gone by it a couple of times, we're going to be doing the irrigation there, but one of the things that is needed is the upgrade to the playground itself. So we've budgeted about $80,000 to put a second unit in that particular playground. It does get used quite a bit, and there's really a lot of limitations and what is currently there. We think by adding another section, I think that the community there would be very pleased.
All right. Just gonna slide into the question for Councilor Bruin, please.
Sure.
Yes, can you be specific where that playground is?
That's the one on the south side of the town. It's where the second spray park is, if anybody knows what that is. So it's called, yeah. So the resurfacing of the tennis courts, we did not proceed this year with the resurfacing because it came to our attention that there's a number of issues at the tennis court where it's starting to heave in the middle. So rather than going ahead and spending I think it was $41,000, we decided to defer to this year, put it in capital, and we would make sure that we do it the proper way one time, and that resurfacing project would last us 10, 15 years if we do it right the first time. Mower replacement, as you know, we have on a lot of parks, and it's a lot of manpower, women power go into those parks. And part of doing business is making sure that we keep up with the equipment that we have, the machinery that we have. And this is, again, another replacement. The tool Bobcat is, and I just wanted to preface this by saying that a lot of these have been with the encouragement and the feedback from our staff themselves. So there were a couple of things from the previous budget that we actually eliminated and we added based on their feedback, which I think is really important that they had some feedback this year. And one of the things that they mentioned was a Bobcat that would be very useful in many, many ways for our grass cutting. And furthermore, we then looked at an Infield Groomer. The Infield Groomer is an item for our baseball diamonds, and it would definitely do a much better job than the old grading. This is what the machine is built to do, is to do infields. And finally, because of the number of the traffic that we're getting now at Kenmac with the campsites and a lot of extra traffic going into that parking lot, and with the amount of activity there, we really feel that by putting some camera system in there will deter some inappropriate activity going on in that particular area, especially in the parking lot. And just to give a better sense for our campers, a sense of security and safety. So that's what I have for this year's budget.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising whatsoever? All right, thank you. Mr. Roy.
Yes, His Worship, just to summarize the capital budget piece. Now you can see what I had started saying at the beginning, that the administration is comfortable, doing budgets in 2022 without dipping our fingers into our reserves. We are going to strictly look at what we have for MSI, for federal gas tax, plus the regular yearly capital contribution. Now, the other part that I would like to also emphasize is on some good news came after I'd already funded the projects, and that was from the provincial government. And what they're telling us here is that the 2021 gas tax fund allocation has been boosted up, so it's going to be 986,000. So that includes 482,000 as a result of one-time funding top-up. So what that means is some of those projects you see on the board, we'll have to look at the objectives of the federal gas tax and find out exactly which ones are relevant. That way we'll have again reduce the money that we're going to get out of the reserve. So that is good news. Now, the other part that I also want to draw Council's attention to is the second portion after the green line. And Mr. Shia just mentioned a little bit of that. Those are projects that can move forward, of course, with long-term debts. So that's an area that probably Council needs to consider. And one of those projects, you can see the raw water pump station. Already we have 1.4 million grant sitting out there. So it's just getting the difference to complete that project. And then the last part, of course, is the additional capital projects to consider. We also have those 1, 2, 3, 4 at the bottom there that Council should put into consideration as well, if they want to move forward with them. Some of those projects, they've been, of course, pushed forward every year. And if maybe Council feels very strongly that we need to look at them in 2022, we could also help us provide that direction as well. Otherwise, above the green line, those ones we can do comfortably with our contributions coming from the tax base, plus the MSI and federal gas tax. So in 2022, I don't intend to touch our reserves. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions at all? Councilor Beckert?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Orwa, you say you don't want to touch the reserves. Why not?
What I mean by not touching the reserves is over the years, we accumulate some funds into the reserves which is not used. So ideally, every year, we get some capital contribution from the tax base. Now, every year, we get about 2.02 million. So if you look at it very closely, we should be doing only about 2 million worth of projects every year. But we do more because we get extras from federal gas tax or from MSI. So what I'm saying here is in 2022, we'll only consider what will come from the tax base plus what we're getting from the federal gas tax, but will not touch any other accumulated funds that have been put in the reserves in the previous years for rainy days.
All right. Councilor Beckert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Orwa. But are you afraid that the fund is being depleted? It's not to your satisfaction, the level of the reserve fund?
That is also contributing to part of it because I'm looking at the revenue that we generate every year, and I'm looking at the projects that are being done, and I'm looking at also the MSI being cut. So we need to start taking precautions, because if we continue, dipping our fingers into the reserves, eventually we'll be running with nothing to work with in the future. So if we can find a way by which we do projects that we can accommodate at this point, then the little that is left, so that we keep on building our reserves one more time, until maybe one day when things turn around and the economy gets better, or maybe the legal framework that you're working on will give us a better funding formula.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions whatsoever? All right, seeing none, someone prepared to make the motion. Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council accepts the 2022 capital budget with funding for information purposes.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 6.2, 2022 operating budget discussion. Mr. Irwa.
Yes, His Worship. Again, back to operating budget. And tonight's, again, discussion is being presented based on each department's anticipated level of service and operational changes identified by the departmental managers. So again, we'll be having some order here to follow, but I think in this case, the first one will start with the police. And the reason is police, the police commission has already gone line by line for their budget. So they're just going to give us at a very high level for council consideration as well. So the police will take the first role, and then we'll keep on following the same order on the board. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Chief Abella. Oh, sorry, yeah, yeah. Just, there you go. All right, thank you.
Thank you for allowing us to come today to present our police commission budget for 2020. I ask the chief to read the narrative for you and to answer any questions that you may have
Right.
after we talk.
Thank you, Ms. Osborne.
Your Worship and members of council, the Police Commission held a special meeting. The Police Commission held a special meeting recently in which members of the commission and our Chief Financial Officer went through our budget line by line in an attempt to find where we could find some efficiencies, as well as establish the budget to provide adequate and effective policing for 2022 and beyond for the Taber Police Service. By following our strategic plan, you will see how our core services are defined. The budget requests before you are a 3-year budget, except 2022 is the numbers that you have today. We are facing an ever-increasing demand on police resources, and we are working diligently to offset these costs with public-private partnerships within our communication center. And we've realized some real successes there, and we will continue to investigate this growth in this regard. We anticipate the budget reductions that were made in 2021. As you know, we were asked to make cuts in 2021 by council, and we came back with some reductions. This year we're needing to catch up on the training that was delayed and the costs associated to that. So we anticipated that those will be reflected in this 2022 budget as well. The Taber Police Service was able to anticipate almost $370,000 in increased revenue in 2022. About $131,000 of this revenue will be offset against expenses from the 2021 and 2022 cadet training program we are hosting. I'm not sure if you're aware, but in November we'll be hosting 12 cadets from throughout the province at the Taber Police Service with Lethbridge College in a 23-week training program. We anticipate a $135,000 increase to 911 revenues. That's coming from the levy that's placed on your phone bill that you get from the province. Quite a while ago, I'd say about 5 years ago, it was here at the Taber Police Service. Dana Bell and I asked the government to increase that levy. A certain amount. We didn't anticipate what they actually gave us at the end, but that's brought actually quite a bit of revenue into the the center for next year, so we're really fortunate about that. And through our CPO dispatch agreements, we anticipate another $45,000 in revenue. So in order to meet the capacity needs within our dispatch center, we are requesting to increase the capacity by 0.75 to allow for us to meet the needs of that core service. Also, we are receiving alert funding that offsets one of the wages of one of our senior constables at about $160,000. As you're also aware, biological services are now the responsibility of policing services to fund. We came to council with that information before. So actually $60,000 has been added and expended, as a contingency has been added to the revenues, but also removed in the as an expense to offset that cost in 2022. As you know, the Taber Police Association contract will be negotiated in 2022, and this may increase the wage line, but at this time the numbers are unknown. So that's a contracted settlement, so I can't give you that number, sir. We will continue to contribute 50% of the full-time equivalency of an IT position, and that equates to about $40,000 from the police budget. We believe this is necessary as we understand the police service does rely and draw heavily on IT resources from the town, as you know. So we have anticipated as well about $13,000 for taser purchase. Well, we've already gone through the capital. I expected both, to be honest with you today. I expected both our capital and our operating to be presented in one presentation to you today, but they were divided in two, so I won't go into any more capital discussion. But I believe we are fiscally responsible, strategic, and we work hard to ensure that every dollar provided us in our community is well spent. And without any questions, that would be our submission for today.
All right, thank you, Chief. Any questions whatsoever? None whatsoever. Boy, everybody getting off pretty easy today.
I'm sure they'll come.
Thank you both for attending and presenting. Mr. Roa.
Yes, His Worship, will continue the same order, and I think the next one is administrative services, and I think Ms. Van Ham here will be here in a few minutes.
All right, thank you. Ms. Van Ham.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
So, as you've heard in previous years, administrative services is encompassed by different costing centers. Costing centers for mayor and council support, and we also include the cemetery. So the various things that we do is, along with mayor and council support, is CAO and administrative support. We also do the freedom of information and protection of privacy coordination, and advertising and communications is under this department, as well as bylaw and policy administration, and we do property management. So we're handling the leases for the municipality. So I will just highlight some of the budget changes. Because of the leasing aspect, the Chamber of Commerce decision from council and the debenture hits our budget line. So we take into account their lease payment as well as their principal and interest portion of the debenture. So that is a highlight there. And also in the last year, you've known the I should say issues with some of the library internal things. So there is an air quality testing for the library that's been put in there, and that's a nominal fee. We're suggesting that every second year. And that's actually about it. Everything else is kind of remaining the same. We've been able to, we're not deciding to do any other upgrades. We're just kind of keeping that as a status quo at the moment. So
all right.
I'm available if you have any
questions.
Thank
you. Any questions? Again, none. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Roa.
Let me Van Ham to continue the next two segments. Now is the CEO budget.
I've also completed the CAO budget as well, and just to highlight some of those, there's not a whole bunch of movement in that one either. We're kind of remaining status quo. except for some internal changes. And so what previously was included in the CAO budget was the HR portion, and that has now been moved to the finance function from under the CAO. So with that, it actually has some decreases in the budget operating line, and that's effective of that. There was some changes in 2021 for contracted services that was increased due to the HR function as well, and so you'll see a change with that. Also in contracted services, there are some building maintenance that is a function of just life cycle replacements, and in that there's a heating and ventilation air conditioning unit, and what's new in there is they wanted to also do exterior building lighting. That's getting old, and for the front, when there's special arrangements or things like that, they have to actually go purchase the separate light bulbs and colors and things like that. So thought that would be fitting for the different occasions that council recognizes. And then some more general services under contracted, as well as painting and flooring for the remaining of the hallways. That's kind of in the customer care service area that hasn't been touched for many years, as well as the painting in the front area there. And the photocopy room and some of the rooms that haven't been previously encapsulated in council's funding for previous years. And that's it for the CAO.
All right, thank you. Any questions in that regard? All right, thank you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Roy.
Council budget. Proceed, please.
In council's contracted services, there's a decrease basically due to the non-election year. 2021 is when the funding was happening, and so that's good for next year. Council's budget decision transferring the AJTMA, the Alberta Japan Twin Municipalities Association Conference, from 2021 to 2022. Because of the non-ability to have it through COVID. Originally, it was scheduled to come out of the council discretionary fund, and the latest motion was to actually put it in the budget, so you'll see an increase there. There's a communication supplies. A teleprompter has been requested due to the high volume of videos for appearances, so that's an increase there. And post-council training, we've included communications and media training, and so that's actually been put in the 2022 budget, just because, as you know, as council, there's a lot of information to start with, so we just kind of like to space it out a little bit. There is also the Trail 77 for council's consideration. That was included based on a motion from council for $5,000 each year, 2022 and 2023. So that's your decision if you would like to continue funding it. There was a specific motion for funding for 2021. Okay, I'm available if you have any questions.
All right, thank you, Councilor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, to
Councilor Strauss, that's off again for some reason.
sorry,
Okay.
can you
I think when you press, I will.
Sorry, I'll ask the question one more time, Your Worship. Can you clarify the request for the teleprompter, please?
Yes, I can. That has been a request that's come through discussions with our CAO, so that's why it was put in the legislative budget for council.
All right, thank you, Councilor Strauss.
So is this a portable unit? Is it, can you elaborate a little bit what kind of a unit this is and where does it go? Is it,
We haven't started looking at specific units right now. We've just kind of got a general budget amount. And so if council does decide to approve that, then we will look at specific units going forward. And yeah, it can be a mobile unit, yeah.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Got it all covered, all right, thank you. Mr. Roy.
Thank you, His Worship. I think the next segment is finance budget. I guess I'll take that one. Now, the finance budget, actually, I'll just hit the major driver, and I think part of it has already been identified from the CEO side. So we've moved the HR department from CEO to finance functional area. And I think this is basically for efficiency purposes. Now, if you recall, the payroll, the HR, the employee concern, all those things are intertwined, and those departments should be working very close together. So we just moved that one in, and I think that is taking the biggest increase in my area. Now, one other area that probably I would like to draw your attention to was is in the capital accountant, our grant coordinator position, which was being held by the finance officer intern. Remember, she was here for almost 2 years, and that was subsidized by municipal affairs. So from 2022, now the person has been let loose, so we have to absorb those costs. So again, that is also driving part of the increase there. So the intern position has been subsidized, all those for those 2 years, and starting from 2022, we have to budget on our side. Now, alongside, all those things coming from HR, there's also the other piece of the contracted services, because as a new HR manager coming to finance, we also have to consider, the conferences, the training that goes with it. We also have to consider, the HR publications that are out there. That's what we've factored in, and I think those are the major drivers for finance budget.
All right,
Do you have
thank
any
you.
questions for me?
Any questions arising? All right, seeing none. Next, Mr. Orwell, please.
Next, let's go to the fire department.
Chief Munshaw.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks. I'll be the next contestant up here. So what we have is broke down into 3 costing centers, as you see today. The costing centers are for the fire department, emergency management, and the fire training center, rolled up into a package that you see. What you'll notice is in the revenue area is the first big target. You'll see that increase or a decrease in revenue. Last year when we took on the petroleum tank inspections, that was a split between the province and the town, gaining a 2-year profit on that, because we not only took in the profits of the 21 year, we also were able to roll back into the 2020 year from the province's revenue. So we had to reflect that due change, which showed us a more of an accurate what we'll be moving forward for the future. The next, what we'll notice identified is the both contracted services and materials and goods. They've both been increased. As we moved in from the fire training center or fire hall to the new fire hall for the first full year, some of the new challenges is taking on the full year of expenses, as well as some of the changes. We were close in our approximation, but we were still slightly out with those adjustments. This will bring us more in line, which you'll see within this year's budget. Here for any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the chief? All right, thank you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Urwa.
I think the next one will be moving to health and safety, and that is also an area that falls under HR, but because we don't have the HR at the moment, I think I'll take that one. For health and safety, again, the major driver here is just reallocation. Now, if you look at that table, health and safety budget for 2022 has increased from due to allocation of contracted services back to salaries and wages. So originally, from council's direction was to have somebody in-house, and we did have somebody in-house, but somewhere along the way, it was contracted out. So all we are doing is bring it back in-house. You can see the reduction in contracted service and increase on the salary side. So that is the only driver, and that is one of the leanest budget we have.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Urwa.
Now, the next one would be IT.
Worship members of council. So in the new year, of course, as usual, IT has a little increase in the budget. This year, actually, I have a little increase into my revenue, thanks to Mr. Orwa for that. And salaries, of course, there is a little increase in the salaries based on the increase Mr. Orwa brought in. And for contracted service, there is a little bit of increase. And again, to speak back about the HRIS and HR, so in 2021, when we budgeted for an HRIS system, it was split between IT and CEO. Now the whole amount is under IT, so that's one of the big increases. We also have two operating projects. They are some upgrades. We upgrade our VMware system and our database engines, servers, so that's another $30,000. And just speaking for every department, there is a little increase into the landline for everyone. And due to COVID-19 and counting more on phone calls and video conferencing, when you call the phone number, it's always a long distance, and we noticed an increase in the last 2 years into the TELUS bill. So everyone got a little increase into that line based on the number of phones. So council has like $200 increase, but police, because of the number of phones they have, it's about $3,000 increase, and it's a variance between different departments. Also, printing service, we have more accurate numbers for the leases. So some departments had a little decrease into their budget because we got a better rate for the leases, and we budget for new copiers in the new year as well. And we did some deduction into material, goods, and supplies. We made some deduction into the training for IT staff and some expenses, and a little bit decrease into the amortization as well. If you have any questions, here.
All right, thank you. Any further questions for Al? All right, thank you, Al. Appreciate that. Mr. Roa.
Yes, we are moving to planning now. Just before Ms. Monk comes, I think Mr. Shea is giving out a different table, and that's just because of one item that we missed, which of course Ms. Monks is going to explain there. If you compare the two tables, you see a major difference if you look at the overall budget. And I think that is just part of the long-term debt on the meadows. Although we don't have the money yet, but at least we need to factor that in the budget. So if you factor in the budget, you'll see, once the revenue comes in, it has to be offset. So allow Mr. Monks to explain that. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Monks.
Your Worship and members of council. So the 2022 proposed budget for planning sees an increase in revenue associated with potential land sales in the Meadows of Tabor manufactured housing development. We've anticipated potential sales of 10 lots, as well as our typical land sales from past years. In contracted services, we have funds for items such as engineering and legal reviews, survey work for land sales, appraisals, and our annual contract with Superior Safety Codes, which represents 60% of the revenue from building permits. We anticipate starting an area structure plan in 2021 for the southeast area of town, which may not be completed by year end, so there are still funds set aside in 2022 for completion of that contract. With the endorsement of the downtown gateway and gateway plans, there are some funds included for implementation of some of those items, and we've also applied for grant funding for these items, so we may see some breaks in those revenues. Our Economic Development Department continues to focus on business retention as identified in our Regional Economic Development Strategy, so we have some funds set aside for this work. We anticipate some of that funding potentially spent on more business videos, similar to those we've currently just shot and are editing and putting together right now to be available on YouTube. We also anticipate being able to attend trade shows. So we've added that back into our budget, as well as public consultation occurring again. So there are some fees that are associated with that. We're hoping to begin work on attracting new industry to town. So you'll also see that the increase in revenue associated with land sales is now being utilized to pay the costs of the debentures for both the land purchase and the construction for Tabor Meadows. So that's the amount that Mr. Orwa is discussing. So we had initially had the one debenture in there for land sales, and we had to add the other debenture for the actual construction of the site. So now our hope is that those proposed lot sales will cover that payment of that debenture. So that's the gist of our budget. Do you have any questions?
All right, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Monks? Councillor Vickering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Ms. Monks. So the increase in sales is strictly the Meadows from what I understand. And that's our share of the lot sale, is that correct? Thank you.
All right, thank you. No other questions? All right, thank you so much. Mr. Roy.
I think we move back to recreation, so.
Your Worship, Council. So you're going to notice a couple of things in this budget. One of the line items is the increase in revenue. We anticipate a couple of things happening with a couple of our events. We will actually be making a few dollars off of those events, and I can't tell you what they are right at this moment, but they will be announced soon, and we are going to be taking a very active role in recouping the costs for these events. So I see that as a real great opportunity for us. We also see an increase in our revenue with the auditorium. We think people are, with weddings coming back, we've already had a number of inquiries and other events that people want to book our auditorium, and we see that as a plus, and we also see that relating to our sales and revenue and our bottom line. The other is the expenses. We're going to be looking at restructuring in recreation. There actually could be even more savings in salaries, which is unheard of in most cases, but this is what's going to happen. And we think we can be a lot more efficient with trying to get our staff to be more in line with the way things are being done throughout the country. And I can elaborate, is just have more focus on the programming, events, that sort of thing, with myself concentrating more on the operation. And hence, one of the things that when looking at the operations, there was a couple of things in last year's budget that one being the tennis court, which now moved to capital. We could take that portion of the budget out. Also, another investment that was being made was in real ice, and quite frankly, the proof of real ice being of any asset to municipalities is well documented that it really doesn't. So there was another savings of about $40,000. So we really tried to look at the line items and look where we could actually do some savings, and also things that we may be contracting out, could we do them in-house? So these were the items that we looked at when we were preparing for this budget. And as you can see, percentage change is actually a minus 4.67.
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sir, can you explain real ice? What is that?
It's a concept of actually having water going through a system, a filter system that really finites the water base with less air in it. But it really, there's no proof. The number of municipalities who have tried it say there really isn't any savings. And just with my own experience with Canland Ice Sports, they're always looking for opportunities to save and energy and money, and they've tried it in a number of their facilities. So I got it from a good source that really the $40,000 is better spent in hot water tanks than it is with this concept. So.
All right, thank you. Any other questions arising at all? All right, thank you, Mr. Roy.
I think it's now Mr. Shea to take the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Scheer.
Good afternoon again. We'll have to sit down for this one. Yeah, I'd say pretty good. Our stormwater, we've reduced it to finally we're at a point here where we're only doing minimal work. We did a couple small projects last year. We redid the ditch on 62nd Avenue, did some stormwater management on the landfill road, things like that to improve things. So basically, we're not asking for a whole lot here. It's pretty much flatlined. Just amortization is what ups the stormwater budget. Moving on to the water, basically the same thing. We're not adding on. Adding a lot. You see materials and goods and supplies went down a bit. Thanks to your capital projects, we're saving on some money on some chemicals, things like that. So it does help to do those capital projects. You'll see savings in the operating budgets. There again, amortization is up 76,000, so nothing we can do about that. Moving on to wastewater. We had a few contracted services going up. A lot of your B&R plant is getting, there is some life cycle on pumps, there's things like that, actuators. So we're trying to be proactive and put a little bit more in the budget every now and then, especially for the wastewater plant. Your treatment plant, your water treatment was upgraded a few years ago, but your wastewater B&R plant wasn't upgraded that much. So being a little proactive there again, amortizations, 83,000, which is a major contributor towards the increase of the budget. But overall, not a lot increase, that's for sure. Solid waste and recycling, this is both budgets combined, the landfill and the collections. Most of your collections are contracted out to GFL. As you can see, not a huge increase either. Everything's status quo. We'll move on to the next one, which is roads and walks. There again, good news. We're pretty much flatlined the budget, but there again, our work is increasing, our workloads have increased, and we really have to thank our staff. They've really come through and done a great job maintaining the roads, ditches, things like that. So not a huge increase anywhere. Some a little bit in general services, contracted services reduction. There again, materials and goods. Some of the goods we're finding went down. Majority went up, but there was some with gravel and stuff that went down. So we're looking at that saving. But other than that, it's about the same budget. No big surprises here, that's for sure. So I'm really happy to answer any questions that council may have. And
All right, thank you. Councillor Beckering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Scheer. I think as we know, the sale of water for 2021 is going to be significantly higher than an average year. But it's not reflected in the next year's budget, and I understand why, but could you just expand on that a little bit, please, sir?
Year by year, we get differences, right? And this is basically an average is what we have to do. I would love to say this year we're going to make good money, but we're also spending good money. TID is increasing the cost of raw water year after year. Anytime we make more water, we're using more chemicals to treat that water. So it kind of offsets each other. So you really won't see a huge, you'll see an increase, but then you'll see better revenues. But you are right, there is more revenue coming in.
All right, thank you. Councillor Strauss.
Yes, Your Worship, to Mr. Scheer, I know we've talked about this before, that wastewater is a cost to the town. And somewhere along the line, we had talked about increasing that slightly to recoup some of those costs, so it wasn't always a burden on the town as compared to fresh water. Can you elaborate a little bit there, because we've had this discussion in the past, because I see you're not forecasting any utility increases even in the wastewater side.
Well, I can forecast increases, but I know they won't move forward. But you're exactly right. Wastewater, only revenue is 2.8 million, but it costs you 3.3 million. But if you look at water, it does subsidize the wastewater. Good revenue in the water. We could all you're doing is moving one to the other. So it doesn't matter if you charge more in wastewater, and then are you planning on reducing water? Is the question, I guess, for utilities.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Scheer? All right, thank you again so much. Mr. Roy, let's get everybody covered.
I think that marks the end of everything for the, just scroll down. So that marks the end of the presentation from departmental heads to council. And as I said, the rest probably will be covering again during the closed session.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Orwell before we move on? All right, someone prepared to make that required motion? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council accepts the 2022 operating budget overview for information purposes.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Just ask for a motion to move into closed session then, please. Councillor Stravas.
Yes, your worship, I'll make a motion that we move into closed
Thank you.
session.
Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.